So the first thing we need to be able to do is have a culture, again, where we can communicate our unarguable value. That if we close, a question I always like to ask is if you closed your doors tomorrow, who would know or care? Um, if you have a specific unarguable value and talk about if my nonprofit didn't exist, this is the hole that would be felt in the community. This is the needs that would not be addressed. That is your unarguable value. It is that you need to be here because you create this change in the world. You make the community is a better place. We want to make sure you can prove your unarguable value. That's the ultimate goal. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that impact measurement is no longer nice to have. Now, this isn't just coming from me, someone who's selling impact measurement software. This is actually research that I did years and years ago. Well, before in a million years, I even thought one day I'd be here in a partnership with Microsoft talking about impact measurement software. When I was just curious about how am I going to leave my government job and start a consulting firm to help as many nonprofit and government agencies as possible have the right data to solve complex social problems. And so at the time, what I did is I launched a national research study that looked at what data did nonprofits have, how are they using that data in their day-to-day decision making, and what impacts were they experiencing because of it. And what I found was that there were three types of organizations. So the first type of organization were what we call high culture organizations. This meant they had data aligned with their mission and were strategically using it to make decisions. We had our moderate culture organizations, which were those who had they didn't have a lot of outcomes and impact data. They had maybe just compliance data or data counts of who they served, but they weren't using it strategically in their decision making. And then our gray bars, they had no data, and I'm not sure what they were using to make decisions. But as you look at this graph, you can see across all the different organizational outcomes that nonprofits were trying to achieve, our high culture organizations outperformed our moderate to low. So how you read this graph is 87% of our high culture organizations had improved efficiencies over the last 2 years. 37% of our moderate culture organizations had improved efficiencies, and 12% of our low culture organizations had increased efficiencies. Now let's look at our revenues. You can see the difference there, where 62% of our high culture organizations, meaning they had that outcomes and impact data and were strategically using it to make decisions, had seen increase in revenues over the last 2 years versus only 18% of moderate and 12% of low. All right, so you might be thinking, as I was when I was doing this research, well, what percentage of nonprofits found themselves in this high culture category? And our research showed that only 25% of nonprofits were in the high culture category, and 75% of them are in the moderate to low. But what we also found was that there was no correlation between the size of an organization, their budget, and their ability to become a high culture organization. So what that means is that there were really small organizations who were using outcomes and impact data to drive success, and there were really big organizations that did not have the outcome data they needed to prove their impact. And so what excited me about that research that I did inspired me to write the book. It inspired me, still inspires me today to do what I do, was that it isn't about the money that a nonprofit has. It comes down to the willingness and the commitment of the leader that understands that having this outcome and impact data is key to their success.